How's it going, bro? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Fritz, and in this video we're going to do a full in-depth mixing session for one of my tech house tracks. So the track we're going to be working on today is called Lonely Ghost. We're going to do the whole full in-depth mixing session with kicks, bass line, vocals, whatever you want to know. The most important thing when you start mixing is first of all that you start the day with fresh ears. So before I start mixing, I always make sure that my ears first of all are not overused by other music. If I've been producing the whole day already music, or I've been to a club or like very loud music, the chances are very high that my mixes are not going to sound as clean. Your ears are basically like a muscle, so if you've been overusing your ears today, it is not really advisable to make mixing. But my ears are fresh today, I haven't been making any music, so I think we're going to have a really good result today. Let's first listen to the build up and the drop, and then we're going to start mixing straight away. So usually when I start mixing tech house, I usually start with a kick and the bass relationship. In this case, I can definitely hear that the kick is too quiet, but I also think that I want to add some sort of saturation. And every time we add saturation to a kick, it makes it automatically louder. So in this case, I'm going to use the saturation knob. By the way, don't be surprised, I have on all those channels already plugins installed. They're just disabled because this is my template when I'm mixing. This basically makes it easy for me. But yeah, let's start with the saturation knob, mute the kick. Right? And I also think that the bassline is too loud. So a classic thing is the bassline obviously needs a bit of sidechain compression, perfectly adjusted to the kick. What I like to do is I usually install an LFO tool on the kick channel to see how the length of the kick is. And then, so as you can see, the bottom one is now the kick, but we don't want any sidechain compression on that one. We just want to see how long the wave of the kick is. And then we're going to adjust the sidechain compression on the bass channel depending on how long the kick is. Always make sure to bypass your plugins because you're going to be able to hear better if this plugin actually makes sense to use, but in this case it makes total sense. Cool. This bassline also sounds really dry. It sounds like it's very compressed in a room. So what I like to do a lot of times is called parallel processing. So everything you have to do really is just to take the bassline channel, assign it to an extra channel, then on this extra channel everything you have to do is add saturation to it, and then you choose basically where you want the saturation to happen, and then we want also this bassline to go more into stereo because we don't want the lower, the sub frequencies in stereo, we just want the higher frequencies. But with decapitator or with like saturation knobs, you can perfectly make a really good saturation sound. Don't overdo it, obviously, this sounds quite nice to me. And then obviously we don't want the sub frequencies because I want to bring this now more into stereo. So especially with a Moog bass like this, I high passed it before the saturation. And everything what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a stereo plugin, which is in this case the relay. This comes also after the decapitator. That sounds cool. Without it, sounds quite nice. I also think that the sub bass or like the normal bass sound needs also some saturation. So the plugins I like to use usually for my bass sounds is called the R bass, which is here. This is the R bass. So this is again just a saturator. I like to saturate usually for my lower bass, the lower frequencies. So here you can choose the frequencies I want to saturate. So I'm going to saturate now 60 Hertz, something like that, and bring it up slowly. Lovely. This sounds now like a really full bass line because usually for bass lines I use compression because we want to make sure that the bass line is a very concentrated energy sound, like a concentrated sound. So usually then I'm using a compressor. You can use obviously the TDR curtailing if you want, it's a free compressor, or the Fruity limiter, which is also compression. And this, let's just use the normal Fruity limiter compressor. Mute the bass. And also mute this plugin sometimes. I takt time usually to very low. because we want the whole bassline sound to be really compressed. So just a little bit. Wow, this sounds amazing. I really like this already. I think the bass and kick are sounding quite nice already. Let's now work a little bit also with the kick, because I think this kick needs more energy. So in this case, yeah, saturation is the best, does the best job. But I think we can leave it like that now. Let's now go to the synth pads. Obviously, a synth loop always has low end information, so I have this high pass filter already installed. We don't want, especially with fruity parametric EQs, we don't want anything below 160 Hertz. So this is good. Cool, and as always, I use saturation, the saturation knob, to make it more interesting. As you can hear already, this main pad is already connected to this auxiliary channel. On this auxiliary channel, I have the Valhalla Supermassive, which is also a reverb plugin. I personally think that reverb is already a part of the creative process. I wouldn't really classify this as mixing, but now because we're actually mixing, I always add a high pass and low pass filter after the reverb, again because we want to cut away the low frequencies. What I like to do as well is add a fruity limiter after the reverb, and then we're going to basically sidechain it to the synth, because then you can basically make sure that every time the synth is playing, the reverb is ducking down a little bit. Obviously attack time to 0, here ratio to whatever, 4:1, 5:1, 6:1. People ask me a lot of times, should you compress 3:1 or 4:1 or 7:1? I tell you, it does not matter really. I think it matters the most that it sounds good. And if you, for example, have 10:1, my threshold usually is higher, and if I have 2:1, my threshold is really low and it really gets the sound. So I think it really just depends. But let's bring this down. Release a bit lower, I think. Also a bit less sidechain compression. Yeah, nice. Always find the sweet spot. What I can hear on the sound are clashing frequencies, so we need to find out what's the hardest frequency or the harshest frequency. Everything you have to do is add a high shell filter, but you make it very small, like this. And then you basically sweep through it and see when it starts hurting a little bit. There's one. So then you bring it down like this. Yeah, and that's already cleaner. Cool. If you've, by the way, gotten any value from this video so far, please make sure you like it right now and subscribe to my channel to not miss out any house music production or tech house production tutorials in the future. Let's listen to all the elements together again. Okay, we have a crash here as well, and I think this crash is way too loud. So usually I like to counteract it with a bit of limiting, because usually crashes and highs and stuff, they have a lot of transients, and I love to use limiters or compressors on those elements, because yeah, basically it makes it easier for you to master the track, because the transients are going to be visible on the audio file as a very massive peak, and if you're mixing or if you're mastering the track, this massive peak is going to be difficult to deal with, because then you have to add a limiter on the master channel, and they're going to basically have problems with, like, yeah, bringing the volume to the industry standard loudness. But in this case, I like to use the limiter. If you now obviously bring the attack to 0, you're going to have no transient at all, and that's going to kill the sound. Then I like to have just a little bit of attack time, something like 2 seconds. Like this. Cool, amazing. As always, after that, also a high pass filter. Here I added already a low shell filter because it's obviously a harsh frequency. Makes sense to me, maybe a little bit less. Yeah. Okay, what I can hear now clearly the most is that we have to work on the drums a little bit. So let's just mute all the drums and work with the hi-hats, the claps and everything else. No bass. As you can hear already, the hi-hat as well has a very, very harsh transient. So I'm going to use again a parametric EQ, a high pass, low pass filter and the limiter. There I want to actually cut away a little bit. As you can hear already, it's already mixed a little bit with the drums. There's a bit of drum reverb happening. Just settle, always make it settle. The reason why I have assigned the hi-hat channel to an extra drum channel is because everything you have to do, you can just connect it to the drum channel, and then it's really easy for you just to mix the reverb together with the elements. You don't have to like upload on each single channel a drum reverb or like a Valhalla Supermassive. It's just a lot of processing power also for your computer, makes it really easy to mix them. But this has already been done by me in the creative process mostly. Also the heights needs a high pass filter and a limiter because it has a high transient. This sounds really nice, I like this. And then the fruity limiter. Okay, I think I also want a bit of more stereo field for the hi-hat, so I'm going to add again the relay, like this. That sounds good. I think this needs a bit more limiting. Alright, this sounds good. I think the kick needs also to be a bit louder. By the way, I have two options for you which will make mixing for you intensely easy. First of all is this house music production mixing template. As you can see already, there's 50 ready to go mixing and mastering chains. Instrument 1, instrument 2, auxiliary channels with ready to go Valhalla Supermassive reverbs. You can obviously exchange them with your plugins, high pass, low pass filters from FL Studio. This template is going to make it really easy for you to mix your tracks faster because it's everything already assigned, everything is colored already. It's all making a lot of sense, already vocal 1, short reverb, all this stuff. And also in the playlist, you can already see that in the playlist, you're gonna have all those channels already assigned with drums 1 to 5, kicks, vocals. Makes it also really easy for you to produce music. If you want to get this specific template, make sure you go right now on the link in the description on gunmode.com and purchase this for under $10. It's gonna save you all the time of producing music. Makes it really easy for me. I'm using this every single time I'm producing music. Make sure you do this as well and save yourself the time of not having to load up every plugin 1,000 times. Alright, let's now go into the vocal mixing. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna just mute the kick and the bass completely because we don't need them for now. I think that this background vocal is a bit too loud. Also doesn't have a lot of transients, so we don't really need to use compression really, but it definitely needs a high pass, low pass filter as always. A lot of times I also like to cut away the high frequencies because they're so inaudible. For example, like this, you can hear that you can't hear them at all. And if you cut them away, we're gonna have more headroom when we do the final master. As you can hear, you can't really hear it. So which means we can literally cut away everything over 13,000 Hertz, but like this. And it's not gonna make audibly a big difference because we don't want to cut away too much. We just want to cut away that much that it is enough and it's not destroying the sound. Okay, so those vocals sound already very, very crispy and clean. I really like them. But I think I always like to add a bit of saturation, so I like to use the sound godizer, which makes the basically it saturates more usually the higher frequencies, and I like that a lot, especially on female vocals.
Someone in the mirror, someone I don't know, and I'm starting to freak out. Oh, where should
Just do a little bit, and then especially with vocals I like to use compression. In this case I'm going to use the TDR Kotelnikov, which is a free plugin.
someone in the mirror, someone I don't know.
Again, as always, if you bring the takt time now to 0 milliseconds, you're going to basically destroy the volume change in the vocals, and especially vocalists, they're singing, so you can hear different loudnesses, and that's important that you bring the takt time up to, let's say, 5 to 10 milliseconds, so you can still hear those louder and quieter parts. And we just want a little bit of compression, not too much, so ratio we can do to 3 to 1, something like that.
Someone in the mirror, someone I don't know, and I'm starting to freak out. Oh, where should I go? The bluest eyes, but they look darker than her soul. Someone in the mirror, someone I don't know.
Now I think they're a little bit too loud, so I'm going to bring the volume down again here.
Someone in the mirror, someone I don't know.
A lot of times on vocals I also use the de-esser, which is a plugin where you can basically de-ess the sound if it's like harsh s or a f.
Someone in the mirror, someone I don't know, and I'm starting to freak out. Oh, where should I go? The bluest eyes, but they look darker than her soul. When did I become?
Again, this vocal is a lot louder now because we use the sound godizer, and we need to make sure that we're not having the volume too loud. Yeah. So basically blend it in that it's not too loud, but we also want to make it audible enough so it is over the elements like the synth loops or the hi-hats and the drums. Cool. Let's listen to all the elements again. I still think it's a bit too loud. What I like to do then, I like to connect the vocal bus with the high instrument bass. As you can see here, this is already connected. And then on the instrument bass, I put a fruity limiter, which is already in the house music production template. And then I connect here it to the kick. First of all, yeah, that's the kick. Then the second fruity limiter is responsible for the vocal bus. So this is basically a sidechain, which is basically ducking down the volume of the synth or like the instruments every single time the vocal is coming in. So as you can see, this is every time the vocal is coming in, this is how much the volume of the synth is ducked down. As always, don't make it too much, otherwise you're gonna have this strange volume change in the synths and you don't want that. Again, just do it a little bit. Now I even think that the bass line is a little bit too loud, so we're gonna decrease the volume in the context of the whole song. Okay, then I like to also use a span on the master channel and see how the wave looks like. For tech house especially, it is important that it kind of looks like this. I'm going to basically paint it now. The bass is high, then in the mid it goes down a little bit, depending if you have a synth loop or not. So it goes up, it goes down here a little bit, and then here again it goes up on the high frequencies. So always try to make sure that where the hi-hats and like the high end is located is also similar to where it is located the sub-frequencies. So I think that we can use a little bit of high shelf EQ on the drum bus to bring it up a little bit. There's also a plug playing at 26. This has way too much low information, so we're gonna also high pass it again. Also too much highs. This should be just very subtle in the background because it's basically just a layer. So basically every single time I start mixing, I'm always making sure to understand which elements are the most important ones, and then I basically mix them chronologically. So I think especially for tech house, kick and bass is the most important. Then afterwards you have the vocals, then you have the synths, then you have also the drums and stuff. And then it's also important within the synths, which layer is the most important one, which is the most dominant one. This is the one you want the loudest, and then the rest you want to, for example, sidechain compress it to the most important sound. So basically then you make sure that you hear them properly. And then again, as you can see how I did it here, I had the vocals and then I sidechain the vocals to the synth loops because the vocals are more important than the synths. So then every single time the vocals are playing, I have a sidechain compression going on in the synth or like in the high instrument bus, which makes it really easy for me. I like to a lot of times also to work with the stereo fill, so I like to use like plugins like this. Obviously you can obviously use this one, but this doesn't sound as good as if I would use just a relay plugin. So I like to use the relay plugin here. Obviously never bring it to 100% because then you're gonna have problems if it's too much stereo. So always bring it to like 30, 40, 50%. But obviously now it's also louder because it's more in stereo. So now I want to bring down the volume a little bit. Or I can use obviously a limiter depending on how I want to do it properly. Attack to 0. Always double check your mixes in mono. Now, one of the most important tips, what I do in all of my production, no matter how much I'm mixing, I always reference my tracks. So every single time I'm mixing a track, I make sure I download a track which sounds similar or how I want it to sound similar like. In this case, I downloaded from Fisher the Little Beauty. I think I just downloaded that because of the low end. Then what I like to do to compare the low end, I put on the master channel a low pass filter. And then I can literally exactly compare how the low end sounds because the low end is the most important tech house. And then I can hear, okay, is the kick maybe too loud on my track or is it too quiet? Does it need more saturation? It really depends. Now let's listen to the reference track and listen to the low end. Exactly, like cut it all the way to like 100 almost. And on my track. First of all, my track seems a little bit more quiet, so we need to obviously make sure before we double check this that it has the same energy. So I always upload the plugin levels. There I press to LUFS, which is basically the energy, how much energy does the track have. And then I compare it. So this has 25 short-term LUFS. My track should have a similar one. If it doesn't, we're going to change the volume, obviously. 24.7, interesting. This basically shows us that my track has more LUFS, but it also shows us that the Fisher's track is louder somehow, which is kind of strange if you think about it. But I also think that it has a lot to do with the sound selection because he used this like very heavy saw wave. I just have a Moog bass which is not as saw heavy, I would almost say. But to be honest, if you compare both, I think it sounds quite nice. I would maybe just increase the volume of the kick just a tiny bit, like maybe 1 or 2%, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, and then disable the high pass filter again. This is how I'm mixing my tracks. If you're still struggling how to do this yourself, I'm also offering one-on-one online coachings where I'm basically explaining you in depth how we can mix your track together. We're going to do it over Zoom call, and I'm going to basically help you to achieve your music production career goals faster because I'm going to be able to give you in real-time feedback for your tracks. We're going to improve together. We can also work on marketing a little bit if you want to work on that, mixing, or even the creative process. I've been working with a few people. So here's a few of my client results in a video.
Hey, what's up everybody? It's your boy Zeno Man, electronic and techno music producer from Hamburg. I took a one-on-one coaching with David Fritz. We met via Zoom and we got along right away, and he gave me a coaching regarding record box and preparing DJ sets for gigs. He shared his screen with me and he guided me step by step through record box. And thanks to his coaching, I'm now pretty confident that I'm able to prepare my own DJ sets with my own songs and will hopefully be able to play live gigs soon. New single dropping soon, stay tuned.
So yeah, thanks a lot for watching this whole video, bro. I really appreciate you. Always make sure you reference your tracks, always make sure to improve as well. Get yourself a good pair of studio headphones. Before you now continue scrolling mindlessly through YouTube, please make sure you check out this video as well, which explains exactly how to produce Zara house music in depth. It's a really easy tutorial for you to follow. Just do it yourself. Sounds really cool. And I'll see you, bro, in the next video.